Just left my house, going to Australia.
Welcome to Modern Grand Tour with me, Garland Lowe. Join the journey as we spend 3 months travelling to the other side of the world. Like the Grand Tours of old, we'll immerse ourselves in foreign cultures and feed our curiosity for the world with the diverse education that comes only with travel. We'll go on walking tours to understand the most popular and historic sites. We'll visit museums and pick out the most important objects and events. We'll talk to the locals and ask them what they think about their country. And there'll be some special moments off the beaten track. Travelling light with one small backpack, the itinerary for this trip begins with Belgium, followed by the Netherlands, Germany, Denmark, Sweden, Finland, Russia, where we'll couch surf across the country via the Trans-Siberian Railway, then catch my first flights to South Korea and Japan before finally arriving in Australia, just in time for my best friend's wedding. In this 7th episode of the series, we'll learn about Swedish Vikings, a Swedish shipwreck, and a band you might just have heard of. So let's explore Sweden's capital city of Stockholm.
First day in Sweden, and the first thing I see is I don't really know what it is.
Sergels Torg is the main square in Stockholm, and while its glass obelisk, office high-rises and roadways make it less glamorous than other European squares I've visited, it at least was practical, with the Tourist Information Centre located on the square, which allowed me to see the layout of Stockholm for the first time.
So there we go, Stockholm. Lots of water everywhere. I think Stockholm's just made of islands.
Indeed, the city is made up of 14 islands and is the largest in the Nordic countries, making it the self-proclaimed capital of Scandinavia. On my first day, as well as go on my usual walking tour, I met up with an old travel buddy for some Fika.
Hello, say hello.
Hello!
Hello everyone, this is Isabel.
There's always been a tradition in offices and families to gather around Fika. What we're doing now is Fika because of the coffee and something sweet. This is the typical vibe.
This is me tasting the cinnamon bun as part of my Fika. So here we go. Oh, quite nice, this.
With Greta Garbo on it. Look, that's how we like it. She's a real icon here. And some say, oh, it's a celebrity Mari. Well, yeah, he's a celebrity too, just a man.
In 2015, Sweden introduced a whole new set of banknotes notable for having an equal number of men and women on them, as well as them all belonging to the 20th century. These cultural icons were made up of an author, poet, actress, film director, opera singer and diplomat. Sweden's modern twist on their banknotes got me thinking who the UK might choose as their own cultural icons.
So, am I right in thinking Sweden is number one in gender equality in the world?
I'd say we're one of the most.
Indeed, Sweden tops the chart in the EU's Gender Equality Index. And having one of the highest percentages of female politicians in the world, Sweden is at the forefront of gender equality lawmaking, as detailed on the official Sweden website, where there is a whole section dedicated to gender equality, and in particular paternity leave, where Sweden once again tops the list.
The men having paternity leave. It also gives the women the opportunity to not miss out in case they want to do a career as well.
Yeah.
But it's very much accepted. Women do it, but also now more and more men are doing it as well.
This is the gym where in 2001, Sweden's Crown Princess Victoria fell for a man called Daniel Wessling. Which isn't so exciting, except that at the time, he was her personal trainer. And this led to the nation debating the princess's decision to date a commoner. Labelled by the media as a gym rat and a tongue-tied commoner from the forests, no one was less happy than Victoria's dad, the King of Sweden. With Daniel spending more and more time in high society, he was supported by Victoria's courtiers, who groomed him in etiquette, languages, public relations, history and politics. Gradually, having somewhat won over the resigned king due to his transformation from fitness-obsessed country boy into prince material, in 2010, Victoria and Daniel married in a reverse Cinderella fairy tale wedding. With the serious issue of class and gender being at the heart of this triumphant story, which indeed mirrors the values of Swedish society, I still find it hard to ignore the fact that every time I look at him, I think of Stephen Merchant. Anyway, all in all, he's done well there.
I'm sure he's so happy about it because he would never be able to have the life he has now
Showing emotion is not it's not part of the...
No, it's not part of the Swedish culture.
Like it would be in like Spain.
No, exactly. It has to really do with the darkness. And it's cold, so people are automatically more isolated.
I mean, I think about it, the difference between the North Europeans and Southern Europeans has so much to do with the weather. When I'm hot, I get hot and bothered is like a phrase, right? Immediately, you don't have restraint on your emotions. You just think, I'm so hot. And also, when it's hot outside, just thinking of like in terms of like sexuality, you probably wear less clothes and be more sexualized. Is that the right word? Whereas in the cold countries, you do have much more freedom as the Swedish are. So so this idea of the north being much more kind of clothed, wanting to do that, and the Southerns wanting to do that it is very visible.
I want to explain that nothing really ever happens in Sweden. And then suddenly in 1973, 4 people's lives was in danger.
In 1973, Jan Erik Olsen held 4 hostages in an attempt to rob the bank in the cream-coloured building on the right. What was remarkable was that during the prolonged standoff, the hostages grew to sympathise with the robber and criticised the police. Eventually, after 6 days, Jan Erik Olsen was captured and all hostages left unhurt. But the psychology of the hostages remained the talking point, with the phenomenon being labelled Stockholm Syndrome, to describe hostages who sympathise with their captors.
The hostages were witnessing in court, saying that robbers were nice people.
We're very politically correct. We don't want anyone to dislike us. That's actually very much rooted in the Swedish culture. That's why also during World War I and II, we were neutral, and we're not a part of NATO.
Right.
We haven't had wars for over 200 years. You walk around in Sweden, Stockholm, you don't see any buildings that are destroyed like you must have felt when you were walking in Germany. You feel you can touch culture. Nothing was destroyed. We weren't a part of those wars.
Standing outside this blue building, the 1926 Stockholm Concert Hall is the venue of one of the world's most prestigious awards, the Nobel Prize.
Who was Alfred Nobel? He was an inventor, chemist, a great businessman, and he patented a lot of inventions. The one that gave him most of his money was the dynamite.
And it was dynamite that inadvertently created Alfred Nobel's legacy. Because in 1888, a journalist error in mistaken identity led to a newspaper publication of Alfred Nobel's death. And when Alfred read his own obituary, titled "The Merchant of Death is Dead," he was described as the man who became rich by finding ways to kill more people faster than ever before. Appalled that he would be remembered in this way, Alfred instructed that upon his death, his wealth be used to establish awards that celebrated humanity. Since 1901, these Nobel Prizes have become the most prestigious awards in the fields of physics, chemistry, physiology or medicine, literature, peace, and later added economics. And to this day, every 10th of December, the anniversary of Alfred's death, the King of Sweden continues to present the Nobel Prize for those who bring, in Alfred's words, the greatest benefit to mankind.
Try to define how is the Swedish way to be. It's hardworking, humble, doesn't take too much room, as in it's person's usually not in your face. They're not the first one to say, I know. Everyone's very careful and quiet.
Okay.
And that is because we have something called Jante.
Jante, or in English, the law of Jante, is a mentality common in Scandinavia where no one is better than anyone else. And whilst there is an understanding that the law of Jante supports community, there is also recognition that it can stifle ambition and individuality.
That is very much rooted in the social democrat. That means that everyone should have the opportunity to educate themselves, to get free healthcare. The state should be able to take care of you. But because of this way that everyone should have the same, it's also led to that everybody should be the same.
Drottninggatan, or Queen Street, is the longest shopping street in Sweden, where it's almost impossible not to notice the second largest clothing company in the world, Hennes & Mauritz.
So there's 3 H&M stores all on this kind of junction. Welcome to Sweden.
With its not too flashy style and with its prices affordable for all, H&M, much like another giant Swedish company, seemed to perfectly capture the Swedish mentality.
At what point in history was there a leader in your government who pushed this?
I'd say actually it was Olof Palme.
Olof Palme was born into an upper-class conservative family, but whilst studying in the US in the late 1940s, he witnessed the impact of social and economic inequality, and so on returning to Sweden became a member of the Social Democrats. With his skill for public speaking and knowledge of international affairs, Palme rose through the party ranks, eventually becoming Prime Minister. Lasting over 10 years during the 1970s and 80s, this era saw Swedish society radically change to what is now known as the Swedish model. All lovely, but not that kind. Palme's policies included raising tax from relatively low to the highest in the free world, prioritising the welfare system of public health, education, social security and childcare, expanding labour union influence, stripping the monarchy of all formal political powers, non-alignment towards both the US and the USSR, support for third world liberation movements, pushing gender equality and reducing fossil fuels.
He was very active and actually, for us, put Sweden on a map.
So Olof Palme, he and his wife, he was walking from the cinema.
And when he reached this spot outside an art shop, he was murdered. In 1986, a lone gunman shot Olof Palme in the back from point-blank range. The killer was later identified by Olof Palme's wife, but lack of motive and evidence meant his conviction was overturned. Today, the case remains both unsolved and active, and is reportedly the largest investigation in global police history. And due to Olof Palme's maverick leadership creating many enemies, there are several conspiracy theories as to the murderer. The three strongest being the South African apartheid government, who wanted to stop Sweden's funding of the African National Congress opposition, the Yugoslavian secret police, who aimed to create a false flag and pin it on Croatian dissidents living in Sweden, and a Swedish arms dealer, who wanted to finalise a $1 billion sale to India without intervention from the Prime Minister, who had recently learnt about the deal's corruption. Other suggestions include various right-wing groups, the CIA and the Freemasons, whilst the least conspiratorial theory suggests that the original convicted gunman had intended to shoot a local drug dealer, but shot the Prime Minister in a case of incredibly unfortunate mistaken identity.
There is the left wing and then there's the right wing. But all the parties, what they want in common is the welfare state.
Oh, even the right wing?
Yeah.
They want the welfare. So your right wing is kind of left wing.
Exactly.
Is there a movement to the further right because of what's happening with immigration?
Our right party has grown a lot. People and the parties did not know how to react to this, and that's still a big question mark, actually. Sweden has been the country with Germany that has taken most immigrants.
Especially tough and especially interesting in Sweden because you have this traditional idea of fairness and everyone is like a great middle class, and then suddenly, because of what's happening with Europe, the European project, it's disrupting this idea which you've taken years to kind of build, and suddenly you're seeing this idea, this ideal that you've created kind of being eroded. Yeah, well, you want the people coming in to also be wealthy and fair, but it's practically very difficult. How do you see yourself as a Swede in comparison to the Scandinavian community?
I think what makes us probably feel like we're closer to Norway is language. Norwegian and Swedish is relatively close. The Norwegians are more relaxed than us. But what has brought Denmark and Sweden together is because of the bridge today between the two countries. So a lot of Swedes work today in Denmark or the other way around. They're louder than we are. Finland used to belong to Sweden. They've been through war, a very sensitive relationship to Russia, which also means that they are very much, they believe the Finnish way. Sweden is the number one in I mean, for being such a small country per capita, produces a lot of companies. Spotify, Ericsson, H&M, I mean, Electrolux. We have so many companies that's made it internationally. We're probably the big brother among these countries. So great
Bye,
to
everyone.
catch this moment.
On my second day in Stockholm, I took a boat to the Old Town, an island where the first Stockholmer settlers founded the city in the 13th century, taking advantage of its natural security and its opportunities for trade. Today, it is one of the city's most popular attractions, allowing visitors to walk through a kind of living museum with its well-preserved medieval architecture, cobbled streets, and various charming oddities, such as the narrowest alley in Stockholm, the smallest statue in Stockholm, and an old-fashioned urinal. The Old Town is also the official residence of the King of Sweden, so I thought I'd pay him a visit and see if he had any more daughters going spare.
I want to ask him.
Unfortunately, he wouldn't let me in, which is a shame, because Prince Garland of Sweden sounds like my dream job.
There you go, soldier doing his duty, protecting the royal family from menaces like me.
I'm ready to do the most touristy thing on this trip yet. There he is. Me, I'm the soldier. So I'm in the royal shop. What the buildings look like. Here's Stephen Merchant and his family.
Very dandy figure, this one. It looks like a stick-on moustache that you get on Christmas crackers.
Well, it's not IKEA, is it? Now, if a kid wore that in London, he'd get beat up.
Leaving the Old Town, I took in the fantastic views of Lake Mälaren, which surrounds the islands of Stockholm. Filled with salmon and trout from the fresh Baltic Sea, inner city fishing is a common activity, meaning dinner is basically free.
So, this is an interesting thing about Stockholm. You're allowed to fish in the river without a licence, so anyone can do it. It's pretty amazing. Right, so we're about to get the metro for the first time in Stockholm.
Oh, bloody hell, that's long, isn't it? Look out! Wait, I'm going to walk down. It's going to take me days. It's like I'm travelling in a different time zone.
This is, well, that's just like advertising. Oh, look at that art, though! Funky! Man, it's like I'm in it's like a cave. Look how clean it is. Swedish public transport system. Deep, deep underground. And this station is equally, it can be artistic. It's like I'm at the airport. What are they doing? Oh, I just walked towards it. I don't even have to show a ticket. Oh, look at that. I'm an idiot.
On my third and final day in Stockholm, it was time to better acquaint myself with arguably the three most important periods in Swedish history.
Seagull's not budging. We are about to go into the Swedish History Museum. Lots of things to learn about the Vikings, I'm sure.
The Viking Age is the period from roughly 800 to 1100 and refers to the time when multiple Scandinavian tribes from present-day Norway, Denmark and Sweden sailed to foreign lands with the objective to settle, raid or trade. Whilst the Norwegians, Danes and Swedes all settled, raided and traded, it is possible to differentiate and generalise. Sailing west, the Norwegians built the most sturdy longships, which allowed them to travel over rough seas and discover new territories, making them the best settlers, such as in Iceland and Greenland. Sailing south, the Danes were the most militarily organised and equipped, and therefore had the best raiders, such as in England and France. And sailing east, using the river systems, the Swedes had access to Slavic and Arab cultures, making them the best traders, such as with Russia, and incredibly going as far as Iran. For the Swedes, they were able to trade fur, grain, fish, and captured slaves from previous raids, for silk, spices, wine, and silver. Soon, Swedish Vikings became so dominant in the east that they were actually invited to rule tribal Russia, an event now recognised as the beginning of Russian statehood. Indeed, the name Russia originates from the word Roslagen, an area of the Stockholm Archipelago. Eventually, however, the whole Viking Age came to an end as Scandinavians stopped sailing abroad due to the emergence of a new Christian religion, stronger foreign opposition, the medieval feudal system, and famine and disease. Today we remember the Vikings as mostly raiders, but it is equally important to be aware of Viking trade if we are to better understand, in particular, Swedish Viking culture. Apparently this is the bottom of a Christian cross, not a Viking penis statue. I then went to visit Stockholm's #1 tourist attraction, the Vasa Museum. Designed to be the Swedish Empire's grandest warship, on its maiden voyage in 1628, it sunk. Then after 333 years at the bottom of the sea, the ship was found and salvaged. No other ship of its size and age in the world has been preserved like the Vasa, with it being 98% of the original.
Here I am in the Vasa ship behind me. I've got my headphones in because I'm listening to an audio guide. So I've just learned the ship sank because the centre of gravity was too high. There was a strong gust of wind, and when the ship leant over to one side, the cannon flaps was open, which allowed the water to get in. The weight of the water brought down the ship to one side, and the ship killed over.
A warship that sank on its maiden voyage. In the 1620s, a king named Gustavus Adolphus II, our first big war king, was living in a period of time when Sweden was about to be expanding. So we had a big area to defend. Polish king at the time, he was named Sigismund III. Sigismund, he had been the Swedish king earlier, was cousins, these two. He had inherited the crown of Sweden from his father and also inherited the crown of Poland through the Polish mother. From her, he had also become Catholic. Catholic in a Protestantic Sweden was not going okay. The father of Gustavus Adolphus dethroned Sigismund and took the throne over of Sweden. And this throne he let over to his son Gustavus Adolphus. Maybe Sigismund would come back and try to take Sweden, so we need to have a big navy to defend Sweden. For this reason, this warship with 2 gun decks was made for Gustavus Adolphus. And one thing I want to show you as well is this man up here. It's actually a boy who's been crowned by 2 griffins, and this is Gustavus Adolphus as a young man, 11 years old, the time when he became the crown prince of Sweden. So this really is representing how much Gustavus Adolphus is the true king of Sweden, nobody else.
Indeed, Gustavus Adolphus would become one of Sweden's most successful kings. Referred to as the father of modern warfare, his skill as a military commander allowed him to build one of Europe's leading empires, lasting over 100 years. And it was during his reign that Sweden achieved its greatest military victory over the Holy Roman Empire in the 30 Years' War, ending Catholic dominance in Central Europe. Despite its sinking, the Vasa ship represents the grandeur and international ambitions of the Swedish Empire, and has now become the symbol for Sweden's most powerful time in history.
Just walking by and I saw that.
Although I didn't go into the Abba Museum, I did have a good nosy around the gift shop, which was like an Abba heaven, where you could buy pretty much anything you wanted related to Abba. Something for mum, something for dad, and something for the kids. Abba is the story of Anna Frid, better known as Frida, Benny, Bjorn and Agneta. In the late 60s, each member was already individually successful as an artist in Sweden, and crossing paths in the industry, romantic relationships blossomed. Frida and Benny got engaged, and Bjorn and Agneta got married, before then united as a kind of supergroup in 1972, singing in English in an attempt to break the international market. After failing to qualify for the Eurovision Song Contest, they tried again the following year with a more upbeat song and costume, and this time booked their place for the finals. On the big night in Brighton, England, Benny put a £100 bet on at 12-1 that ABBA would win the competition. And with the conductor of the orchestra unusually turning up in fancy dress,
the song is called Oh, and it's Napoleon.
The band produced an outstanding performance.
I was defeated, you won the war.
Sweden had won their first Eurovision. Benny was £1,200 richer, and pop music would never be the same again. Over the next 8 years, ABBA released a string of incredibly catchy songs, all of them I'm surprised that I know. And their biggest hit, followed by by now one of the biggest bands in the world, they continue to produce more memorable songs. But then Bjorn and Agneta separated, inspiring one of the most famous breakup songs ever. Then after a couple more hits, Frida and Benny separated, and again, this was played out in their last major single. In 1982, 8 years after Benny put that £100 bet on at 12-1, ABBA dissolved. One of the biggest selling acts in the world ever, with their greatest hits being the UK's second best selling album of all time, and made all the more impressive by the fact they wrote and sang in their second language. ABBA mastered the art of pop music like no one before, and laid the foundations for today's generation of pop pioneers, who through no coincidence, as we'll see, also hail from Sweden.
How about that for an on-stage performance? Sweden, they've never won it, but they've surely got to be up amongst the reckoning with that one.
Pre-1974, like so many other non-native English-speaking countries, Sweden had been solely an importer of international pop music. But now, with ABBA as the watershed moment, Sweden, a country of less than 10 million people, joined the small list of successful exporters. ABBA's unprecedented success turned them into Swedish role models, and this changed the Swedish psyche. The attitude of, if they can do it, we can do it, swept across a generation. And this saw the expansion of the socialist Swedish government's municipal schools programme, allowing children from all economic backgrounds to learn an instrument. This investment, aside from achieving its intended aims of getting kids to do more positive leisure activities, saw commercial returns in the 80s with Europe and Roxette, and in the 90s with Ace of Base and the Cardigans. But Sweden's biggest success is right now. The Songwriters League table for US number ones reads as follows: Paul McCartney, John Lennon, Max Martin. Who the hell is Max Martin? Max Martin is a songwriter-producer phenomenon whose 22 and counting US number ones include some of the most iconic pop songs. His systematic method of songwriting is known as track and hook. First, a beatmaker, in this case Martin, creates an instrumental background track. Second, multiple top-liners are invited to submit their melodic hooks of verse, bridge and chorus. Third and lastly, the beatmaker selects the best hooks and puts it all together. Martin's songs, characterised by driving beats, euphoric choruses and simple lyrics, became hit after hit. And soon other Swedish musicians latched on to Martin's formula, producing Today, Sweden is remarkably, given its size, the third biggest exporter of pop music in the world, with Stockholm described as being to pop what Nashville is to country. And the root cause for what is known as the Swedish music miracle is what has been dubbed the ABBA effect. The next day, it was time to leave Stockholm for Helsinki in Finland. Now, normally you'd go by plane, as it takes only an hour. But seeking a more adventurous journey, I took this ship, which takes 16 hours. And after playing on the elevator, I thought I could have been in Finland by now. But then I found this awesome map.
Stockholm is there, and Helsinki
is there. And where you can see the red lights is how far we've travelled and how far we need to go. Slowly make our way over there. But as you can see, we're still kind of hugging the coast. So if I were to look out the window, you should still see lots of lambs. Kind of an idyllic place to live, really. A house on its own island. How gorgeous must it be to live there? You've got just like this random island in the middle. You could probably row to on a boat or on a kayak or on a canoe and just have a day out, just picnicking, lounging in the sun there. Officially left Stockholm land. Goodbye, Stockholm. Goodbye.
And as I watch my ship sail out of the Stockholm Archipelago, I could reflect on my time in Sweden, where 3 themes stood out. First was equality, from gender as seen on the banknotes to class as demonstrated by the royal marriage, and to a whole state system institutionalised by Olof Palme. Second was aversion to hostility, from the dynamite origins that led to Alfred Nobel's prizes, to the empathetic psychology of Stockholm Syndrome, and to the military neutrality shown in the World Wars and currently with NATO. And third is commerce, from its origins of lesser-known Viking trade with the East, to now being world leaders in fashion, furniture, technology and music. In sum, it seems Sweden is managing to find the right balance between its humbling law of Jante equality ethos and being a superstar on the international stage. And ultimately, that can only be down to its remarkable people.
There was someone who said, for being such a small country, you make quite a big splash.
Join me in the next episode of Modern Grand Tour, where we'll be in Finland's capital, Helsinki, where we'll explore an inhabited sea fortress, visit a church built into a rock, and learn about the strained relationship between Finland and Russia.
So we ended up losing 25,000 men, but the Russians ended up losing 125,000 men.
So until next time, Godspeed.